so the President Trump's remarks are racist, I believe, Islamophobic, and we're asking for him to temper down political violence because the state of Minnesota has suffered enough. So I speak to President Trump, but I also speak to, the First Lady. She also has a role in this, and in fact, she has, her son is half immigrant. So America is an immigrant story. Other than Native Americans and the forced slaves of African Americans, the rest of us came with an immigrant story. We came here with nothing. We made ourselves something. We worked hard. Immigrants who come here work extremely hard. Somali Americans are no different. I mean, it's extremely disappointing for President Trump to target a single community, specifically for the acts of individuals. Unfortunately, this is the oldest playbook when it comes to targeting, especially black communities in this country. And it's the same narrative. Somali Americans are proud Americans. We have been here for more than 30 to 40 years. The overwhelming majority of Somali Americans, about nearly 60%, are U.S. born. The rest of them, almost 90% or 87%, are U.S. residents or citizens. And so he's speaking to Americans who have been here, who contribute to society, doctors, engineers, lawyers, those who are serving in the police force and the United States Army. So the President Trump's remarks are racist, I believe, Islamophobic, and we're asking for him to temper down political violence because the state of Minnesota has suffered enough. But we've lost House of Representative and Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and nearly lost State Senator Hoffman and his wife. And so, these rhetorics are dangerous. We understand they're politically motivated. President Trump himself came to St. Cloud, and Somali Republicans stood behind him in rally. He mentioned that he welcomed Somali American support for his race. So he came here demanding that we vote for him. And some did vote for him, and now he's disparaging the entire community. It's unfair, and unfortunately, it's putting a huge target on the backs of the Somali American community. Well, I sent it to the president, but I also like to send it to the First Lady, Melania Trump. She's someone who is an immigrant, understands the story of immigrant, has felt the second-class nature that Americans oftentimes project at immigrants. She's now, literally, the first woman of the United States. And, this moment, I think her message and her support for immigrants across this country should be welcome. So I speak to President Trump, but I also speak to, the First Lady. She also has a role in this. And in fact, she has, her son is half immigrant, so America is an immigrant story. Other than Native Americans and the forced slaves of African Americans, the rest of us came with an immigrant story. We came here with nothing. We made ourselves something. We worked hard. Immigrants who come here work extremely hard. Somali Americans are no different, starting out in turkey plants and chicken plants and doing some of the hardest jobs. And now their children are now stepping up and becoming city council members and mayors and innovators and doctors and engineers and nurses, and futurely maybe even President of the United States. Well, I know Minnesota leads the nation in attacks against mosques. This is before even the comments came up. We know that there's a special target against black immigrant Muslims, which the Somali American community are. And I know my community is afraid right now because of the ICE raids. In fact, the ICE raids are not really effective. And the reason why they're not effective is because majority of our community are lawful residents and citizens. And so, I understand their fear. I understand their concern. We have not seen people show up to malls and stores. And I understand that. And I think President Trump and others need to know that. Somali Americans came here and came to this street. This Lake Street that's behind me, actually, in the 1990s was struggling. Today, it's a vibrant community, and it's because of the Latino population and the Somali American population that made this place home and took shuttered buildings and started businesses and engaging. And now we have a robust community because of that. Some of them are kicked out because now the area is more affluent and more people are moving in and bigger businesses are attracting. In fact, it is Somali Americans that saved one of the towers, the Sears Tower, which is on Lake Street. It was meant to be demolished, but it was not demolished because of the economic activity that immigrant populations create. America's greatest secret is immigration. If you look at every major corporation in America, it is started by children of immigrants. You talk about Elon Musk, you talk about Google, you talk about all the major organizations, including Apple. You know, Apple is a Syrian American immigrant story. Everyone loves Apple, but they don't want to love the idea that an immigrant child created that company, and today that we love and we share. So an attack on one immigrant population is an attack on all. I have extended family that obviously are concerned for their statuses and things like that. But, you know, my family are all immigrants. We're all citizens. You know, my children are born here. You know, this is a home for us. You know, we came, I would say that, you know, my dad says that we came from a very cold place, but we found a place with people with warm hearts. And this is one of the things about the success of the immigrant story, is that the immigrant story is not successful without the people who were there, who welcomed us, the Lutherans in this great state, the Protestants in this great state, the Catholics in this great state, the incredible Norwegians and Scandinavians and Germans who made this place home, who brought us in and taught us how to survive in this winter and how to, you know, take care of our families. And so, you know, the immigrant story relies on a continuation of other people being hospitable and welcoming to us. To take a crime of an individual and then paint it on an entire community is just wrong. It doesn't make any sense. We don't do that for anything else. Why would we then target a small minority community like the Somali American community? You know, so I think that's important. The second thing is that terrorism, in fact, the global terrorism targets more Muslims than anybody else. Somalis are more likely to be killed in a terrorist attack than anybody else in Somalia. And we are all bounded on the idea of stopping terrorism. All of us are responsible for that. And we are here partially because we ran away from that war, that mindset. And instead we came here and we created a vibrant communities that today we're really proud of all. It does not look good. You know, Somali Americans are everywhere, and Somali Americans have also voted for President Trump. There's a growing Republican base here of Somali Americans, both in St. Cloud and other parts of the city. And many of them are really questioning about the Republican Party. And partially it's not even President Trump's remarks. It is the silence of the Republican leadership in the state who are refusing to acknowledge that Somali Americans should not be talked about that. And individuals who commit crime should be targeted, but an entire community, scapegoating an entire community, is a textbook definition of racism. We are rejecting this initiation by the president and those who are also championing it.